Hello and welcome to General Nazgrim. Loyal to the war chief no matter what, you must now face your old ally in mortal combat. Unless you play Alliance, in which case you probably don't even know the guy. You still have to kill each other though. You will need 2 tanks, 2 to 3 healers, and 5 to 6 DPS. Some groups tank the boss where he stands at the start of the fight, though we found moving him into the area with the ads spawn far easier. Tanks will need to taunt off each other for the stacking debuff called Sundering Blow as soon as their stacks fall off, which was usually at about 3 stacks for us. Other than making sure not to stand in bad stuff, that's basically it for tanks. General Nazgrim is much like a warrior, so the fight will revolve around his stances and his rage. He will gain rage from different abilities, some are avoidable and others are not. Nazgrim has 3 stances which he will use: Battle Stance, Berserker Stance, and Defensive Stance. In Battle Stance, he gains a little bit of rage constantly. In Berserker Stance, his damage done and damage taken is increased by 25%, so he will hit harder but will also take more damage. All his abilities that give him rage will give him twice as much rage in this stance. In Defensive Stance, he takes 10% less damage, and getting hit gives him rage, unless the player hitting the boss has the Sundering Blow debuff, which basically means nobody but the tanks with the debuff should hit the boss during this stance. So Battle Stance is pretty normal. In Berserker Stance he does and takes more damage, so healers keep in mind the increased damage, and DPS use your cooldowns during this stance for the full benefit. Nobody should hit the boss during Defensive Stance except for tanks with the Sundering Blow debuff. Keep in mind that the stances only last for 1 minute, and he will always use Battle, then Berserker, then Defensive, and then Battle again. In all stances, the boss will occasionally use Bone Cracker, which puts an undispellable debuff on a random player, reducing their maximum health by 10% and making them take a bit of physical damage. This fades after 30 seconds, and there isn't much you can do except heal through it, though it is something that needs to be kept in mind. There are a whole slew of ads in this fight. The first pull will have a whole bunch of Orgrimmar Faithful. They have little health and do very little damage, so it should be no trouble for tanks to pick them up and everyone to AoE them down. Most of the ads can be tanked, though aside from the Orgrimmar Faithfuls at the start, they don't really need to be tanked, and some of them just should not be tanked. Ads are always the higher priority in this fight. If they aren't killed off, then you can get overwhelmed very easily. Korkron Iron Blades constantly spin around, dealing heavy physical damage to anyone near them. These can be picked up by the tank, though they don't really need to be tanked. As long as players are spread out and there aren't too many of them, you should be fine. At 50% health, they will use Last Stand, which just gives them a bit more health. You can't do anything about it, so don't worry about it. Korkron Assassins are the most dangerous ads in the fight, unless they're handled correctly. They will start off in stealth and can be targeted and DPS to break them out ahead of time, though it isn't too important. The main thing with these ads is they will put Assassin's Mark on a random player and fixate on them. They will do medium melee damage, though if the player turns their back on the ad, they will use Backstab and deal huge amounts of damage, which will kill them almost instantly. So if an ad fixates on you, make sure to keep facing it. If you turn your back on it, you'll die before you can say, "Oh, Backstab's OP." Korkron War Shamans are the most important ad here, and the highest priority. They have Earth Shield on them, which makes them get healed a little bit when they're hit, and it isn't very important, and it can be dispelled with an offensive dispel. They cast Empowered Chain Heal, which heals everything for a huge amount. This can and should be interrupted. They also put Healing Tide Totems down, which will heal anything within 8 yards for a ton. These totems need to be nuked down, and the ads and the boss should be kept away from them. Korkron Arcweavers cast Arcane Shock, which deals a large amount of arcane damage and applies a stacking buff on the ad, increasing the arcane damage it deals. It will also use Magistrike, which creates blue lines on the floor, which deal damage to anyone that stands in them, so get out of and stay out of the Magistrike. Both of its casts can and should be interrupted if possible. It will also blink around randomly. Only the Faithful ads and possibly the Iron Blade ads should be tanked. Everything else either can't be tanked or just should not be tanked. Now to talk about the boss's rage and how this is going to work. The boss gains rage through his stances as well as Sundering Blow. The more stacks the tank has when they get hit, the more rage it will give the boss. So tanks really need to be on top of the taunts or the boss will gain way too much rage. The boss has 4 abilities that he can spend rage on. He will always spend his rage on the highest costing ability he can use and can only use 1 every 15 seconds due to cooling off. Heroic Shockwave costs 30 rage. He leaps much like a heroic leap at a random player, dealing physical damage to them and anyone within 10 yards of them. It will also create lines of fire on the ground called Aftershock that will explode after a few seconds, dealing damage and giving Nazgrim 3 rage for every player hit by this, so get away from and stay away from those lines. It's easy to see, easy to move out of, and just all around easy to avoid, so no players should get hit by this. Korkron Banner costs 50 rage, giving the boss 3 rage every time one of the adds uses an attack. This banner needs to be nuked down right away. It doesn't have very much health, so it shouldn't be an issue. As long as it's dealt with correctly, the banner is the weakest of all the rage abilities. Warsong costs 70 rage and deals damage to all players equal to 50% of their maximum health as physical damage. Due to it being physical, armor does help to reduce it, but it still hurts quite a lot, and healers need to be ready to heal everyone up. Ravager costs 100 rage and summons a spinning blade that moves around the room. They don't seem to fade, so if you get one of these, it will be there for the whole fight. Getting hit by the axe deals a large amount of physical damage and gives Nazgrim rage. You really want to make sure that the boss never reaches 100 rage, because these are a pain to deal with, and once one spawns, it makes it easier for another and another to spawn, and soon the whole room can get filled with these things. So do your best to prevent Nazgrim from reaching 100 rage, and using this, and if he does use it, then everyone needs to get away from and stay away from it. At 10% health, Nazgrim will start calling in adds faster than you can deal with them, and this is the time to pop everything, including Bloodlust, and finish off the boss. Make sure that he doesn't enter this phase in defensive stance, or you'll have trouble, so watch his health pool and stop DPS if needed. If possible, it really helps to start this just as he's about to go into Berserker stance for the extra damage. If you're going for the achievement involving Gammon, then you want to avoid having war songs, as they will kill Gammon very quickly, and there's no way for healers to out-heal it due to its percentage-based damage and Gammon's insanely high health pool. So basically, make sure that the boss is not going to be in defensive stance during the final 10%, use Bloodlust and nuke him down, kill adds, totems and banners, don't stand in fire, avoid spinning axes, and tanks taunt when your stacks run out. And that's it for General Nazgrim. I hope you found this guide helpful, and if you did, then please click that like button, and of course, subscribe for more videos. Good luck and have fun.